Hey, it is your girl, Lovely Lola, and I want to welcome you to our very first show of Business, Balance, and Bull. I want to say more, but we're going to leave it at Bull today. We've got a lot of fun for you guys, and I'm extremely excited to have you right here on the show with us. Brought to you on behalf of Total Entertainment Radio. Y'all already know how we do it. I want to thank Mr. Silas Cobb and the Total Entertainment Radio for giving me this platform today to be able to do this. I do have more than 20 years of business experience and leadership knowledge to be able to share with you. But don't worry. We got a lot of people that's going to be coming on today to make sure you guys get what you need. And no matter where you are in your business, we've got tips and insights to help you navigate through it, maintain your balance, and avoid all those unnecessary pitfalls, y'all. We're going to do that right here today. I have a wonderful guest with you guys for my very first show. I'm excited to introduce her, but at the same time, I kind of want to build her up a little bit. Listen, you guys, just if you understood the phenomenal woman that I have in front of me. Not just a businesswoman, but she is a clinical licensed psychologist. She operates her own mental health business, and she's going to show you guys and give you tips and insight on things that you need to do to build your business. So if you're at the beginning of your business, if you're an experienced entrepreneur, the very first thing you need to do is do what? Build your mental, right? That's number one, or it should be number one on your business plan, or you've already set yourself up for failure, right? Okay, so with that being said, today we're going to talk about, you guys are not going to want to hear it, it's going to hurt some people in the back row, but we're definitely going to talk about self-sabotage and generational curses. And like I said, I have this beautiful person. Without further ado, we're going to go ahead and bring our beautiful Lacara Gilmore.
Hey,
Dr.Lacara Gilmore.
Hey, sweetheart. This was so good to see you.
Hello.
Congratulations on your thing, big girl.
Thank you.
Doing big things out
Thank
here in
you.
the street. Thank you for having me. Well, good people, my name is Dr.Lacara Gilmore, and I am, yes, a clinical psychologist. I specialize in marriage and family therapy, substance abuse and trauma focus, and let's just say a partridge in a pear tree.
Okay.
And yes, I definitely have my own clinic. I've been up and running since 2018. The name of the clinic is called the Beautiful Mind Family Counseling Services. And we service everyone from between the ages of 18 to 64. And if you are a child under the age of 18, it would have to be a autism spectrum situation as it relates to IEPs in school.
Awesome. Okay. So you've talked to me about trauma. Talk to me about the resources that are available to us out there. There are so many people that deal with different aspects of trauma that they don't even know. You have been afflicted and something affected you, but unfortunately you've repressed it and or you've just decided that I'm going to ignore it and move past it. So those different aspects of trauma, and of course we won't have all that time to dive into it, but we just want to be able to talk about the resources that are available for those that are going through trauma.
We can talk about resources and where you need to go to get the help you need. Let's talk about what trauma looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it has many, many faces, okay? When we hear the words PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, people instantly think military, because that was where it stemmed from. And even then, it used to be called war neurosis or shell shock, if you will. But PTSD is in everything that we do, especially if you're in the culture. You know, we all have experienced someone who has lost somebody, whether it was through cancer or a car accident or, you know, a shot. You know, those things are car accident. Those things are very, very, very traumatic. And the closer you were to that person, the more traumatic it is to be able to get over them. The post part behind that is it's like somebody rewinding a videotape and playing that piece over and over and over in your mind. And so much so that it's causing you the anxiety, the depression, the irritability, the lack of sleep. You know, some people will say, well, what came first, the chicken or the egg? It depends on what the chicken is then.
Absolutely.
Because, you know, I have people that will walk in and say, hey, I'm dealing with anxiety and depression. or I don't really know how to deal with this. I'm constantly irritated, I'm constantly crying, and I really don't know what's going on with me. And the first thing I'll say is, and it doesn't matter what color they are. Okay, let's be clear.
Yes.
PTSD doesn't have a racial face. Mental health doesn't have a racial line. Let's be clear. Okay, we all go through something regardless of the situation. So if I get a phone call and someone is telling me they're having these mental health issues and they're not really sure where they're coming from, or they just started, and based on the age of this person, I'm automatically asking them, well, who have you lost within the last year? What happened to you that was a bit overwhelming, that you may be suppressing, like you mentioned earlier? Was it a breakup? Is it the anniversary of the loss of a family member, usually a grandmother, a mother, a father? Did you lose a child or something like that? Because individuals don't understand there are stages to grief and loss. And if you don't allow yourself psychologically to go through those stages of grief and loss, that thing can set up and get real ugly. It's like a sleep debt. When you don't get no sleep, and that body be like,
I'm gonna shut you down one way or the other.
Behind the wheel. Okay, baby, or stand in the McDonald's line.
Absolutely.
Yes, ma'am. So saying all that to say, it's imperative that you understand that your body psychologically has to go through those stages of grief so you can be able to process everything that you need to go through mentally, emotionally, and psychologically, and physically. Because people don't understand, mental health will tear you down physically. The number one killer for women used to be heart disease. Get stressed out. Get stressed out, baby. It'll take your hair, the livelihood, and then you. It's just a matter of time, okay? And a lot of our society, because of COVID, hasn't really been putting that out there like it used to be. It used to be heart disease, the American Heart Association always say, heart disease is the number one killer of women more than any other cancers. We used to see that all the time on TV, but they didn't talk about heartbreak. They didn't talk about stress. They didn't talk about, is really dying from a broken heart really a real thing? Get your heart broken and find out.
And different levels of loss.
Yes, baby.
Absolutely.
Okay, imagine having to bury a child. Okay, something different.
Y'all already hear it.
Something different.
Y'all hear it.
So, and that again is PTSD. It's the post-traumatic. And then there's a thing that's a sister to the PTSD. It's called secondary trauma. A lot of people, unless you're in my field, don't really understand secondary trauma. We know it because we have to treat our individuals, and secondary trauma can be stressful on us because we can become overwhelmed trying to help someone else. But the secondary trauma can also affect individuals who are around individuals who've been affected with PTSD. So if I had an auntie or an uncle who was in the military and they were wounded, but I have to be the caretaker of this individual. So they going through their PTSD, they got their stuff. Don't get me wrong, but now I got to care for them. I got to watch them.
Who cares
go
for
through.
The caretaker?
You know what I'm saying? Who's caring for the caretaker?
Absolutely.
So now I have my stress behind that. I'm suffering just like they are. And usually, 90 times out of 90, the caretaker go before the patient. I've been to several funerals, especially some in my own family, where the caretakers were called home before the actual patients because they're so overwhelmed. They're so stressed out. They didn't have to put their needs and their concerns and their wants on the back burner because the love and the care that they had to provide for their loved one. And it can be very overwhelming. And that alone is a PTSD situation as well. You have to keep watching that over and over again. So when we talk about trauma, we have to be mindful that it can happen to an adult and a child. Imagine having a mother who was a substance abuse user and then you being ripped from her arms, placed in a home that you will never see her again. And you're bouncing from home to home to home to home, and you ended up in adoption agencies or placement centers where you possibly got to fight for your virtue and your life. And it's about survival skills. You become institutionalized just like you would as if you were incarcerated. It's a thing. It's a whole thing. That's trauma.
Absolutely. Now, when you're dealing with somebody who's dealing with trauma, and we're gonna take a quick break and come back to this, but I do want to know, how hard is that for you? Like you said, we talk about caretakers, we talk about caretaker guilt. How hard is that for you as a psychologist to handle that burden in order to be able to help heal those people, or to be able to help? Because there's no way, as a nurse, there's no way when I touch somebody, I know I feel their pain. I want to be able to give that compassion, but I'm human too, so I'm feeling every bit of that pain.
Absolutely.
And I know those are things that you take with you as well. So we're going to take a small break. commercial for a moment, listen to some of our sponsors. If you're interested in becoming a sponsor, go ahead and reach out to us on Total Entertainment Radio. When we come back, we're going to go ahead and go back with Mrs. Dr.Lacara Gilmore. We're going to talk some more about trauma. We're going to talk about self-sabotage. We're going to talk about generational curses and how it affects your business. Just one moment. How you feeling? Loving it? That's good. That's good. All right. So I don't know how long of a segment break do we do? He said drop it into 2 pieces and then we'll go right back in. I am really loving the information that you're providing. It's awesome. It's awesome. It's hard hitting. Like you say, you're talking about not just one race, not one ethnicity. At some points we were told, what happens in our home stays in our home, so therefore we never talked about those things.
Yes, ma'am. And
you know what I mean?
You said that when you mentioned
never discussed that. You know what I mean?
Curse.
So those are the things, just being able to open that up and break it. So
yes, ma'am.
we're gonna do it.
Yes, ma'am. And it's more than an ocean, because that becomes a PTSD trauma situation too. We've all had that, or we know someone or somewhere in our family where we've had an aunt that was raped by an uncle or cousin, and she was forced to have that baby. When we talk about,
and then it became not just the baby, the aunt, the baby.
Okay.
So we're gonna come back off our little break and then go back in. Is we doing that?
Oh yeah, I heard you.
Okay, all right. We're just making sure we was good. I was just making sure I was good before we went back in. Like before we go, because I don't want to get too much, because we get to talking and then we ain't on the break. We on the break, but we ain't on the break. So, and then we go back in, because like when we get into that, that's just a whole nother. Like we'll be.
Oh baby.
We will be. All right, welcome back.
Hold on. I'm sorry.
Okay.
All right, whenever you ready for real.
Get on my nerves. All right. Welcome back. I am your host, Lovely Lola, and welcome to Business, Balance, and Bull, brought to you today by Total Entertainment Radio. We have been off to a great start with Dr.Lacara Gilmore, licensed clinical psychologist. Our topic today is hard-hitting, and it has absolutely been about self-sabotage, generational curses, and how it can affect your business. We are touching on some of those subjects. We just before the break talked about trauma and how it can affect you, and how you don't even realize that you have been a victim of a trauma. But now we're going to move a little bit deeper. We're going to keep that self-sabotage, that generational curse. We're going to keep that conversation going, and how it affects your business, how it puts you in a stagnant place, how it stops you from moving, how it puts you into a fearful state where you know the information, but you're too scared to convey it to anybody else. You know why? Self-sabotage and generational curses. So when you say generational curses, Dr. Gilmore, I mean, Dr. G, can I call you Dr. G?
You can call me.
I'll call you Dr. G. All right.
I'm late to cash my check.
All right. So we can call you Dr. G. When you say generational curses, I'm like, are you talking about something like, I hex you until you do right by me?
Anything you do go wrong.
I just want to know, like,
Listen.
what is a generational curse, and how does it affect your business?
It started there. Let's talk about generational curses, and to get back to, because your listeners are going to want to know those resources. Please understand, listeners, I'm going to get to that at the end.
Absolutely.
Of the thing. I did not forget. I just wanted to identify what trauma is, and now we're going to identify the generational curses and what they look like, and how to start breaking them as it relates to your business. Now let's talk about generational curses. Now these things are I can speak on our culture, even though I know what it looks like in everybody else's culture, but it's pretty similar. And it's about people hurting other people. That's where it started. You know, we all had that matriarch or patriarch, however you were raised, that had that, well, go on in my house, stay in my house.
Absolutely.
That is the birth of generational curses. And we understood by that because we used to get them butt whoopers because of that. Don't you say nothing that happened outside of that house. I don't care what you saw, what you weren't supposed to see, what you heard, or what you weren't supposed to hear. You better not repeat it, or it was your hind part. Am I right? Am I wrong?
Right.
Unfortunately, it was because of that generational curse, that cognitive distorted thought process behind that is why our generations of our culture ended up with substance abuse. Whether it was alcohol, whether it was crack, whether it was domestic violence, whether it was promiscuity, it was a combination of. If you know someone, or if it was you who had an auntie or a grandmother or somebody who was raped by another family member during that time, I'm talking about before Roe versus Wade, okay? I'm talking about that woman having to have that baby, raise that baby, and that baby had mental health issues. Well, no one could talk about that. We always knew Uncle Earl was slobbing. We always knew his eyes was cocked like a pistol, but we knew we couldn't say nothing. We knew he favored Paw a little bit more than we did, but we knew we couldn't say nothing. It was just the family secret, if you will. But see, Uncle Earl had to grow up. You see, Granny was ashamed, yes she was, but she didn't get that baby no help because of generational curses, because what went on in her house stayed in that house. But in the meantime, Uncle Earl needed help. Uncle Earl now, because he didn't get the help, is now a grown-ass man. And now we're leaving our kids, our little cousins, our little girls, and our little boys to babysit Uncle Earl, Uncle Earl to babysit them, because we trying to go out and we're hanging. He's the family go-to, if you will, But what the problem is that nobody taught Uncle Earl about growth and development. Nobody taught Uncle Earl about sexual urges and tendencies. Nobody gave Uncle Earl the help that he needed, the medication he needed to help with urges and mental health and outrage. So now Uncle Earl is touching on our little boys and touching on our little girls, his little cousins or his nieces and his nephews. And now we have started a generation of promiscuity, homosexuality, the birth of LGBTQ, just about. Okay, so now we're cutting off our generations, unbeknownst to grandma and her whole thought process, cognitive processing. We're cutting off our generations because now he's touching on these kids. Nobody is saying nothing to Uncle Earl. Nobody is saying nothing to grandma. These kids are afraid to go to help because Uncle Earl is telling them, if you say something, I'm gonna hurt you or you're gonna get in trouble. Nobody's gonna believe you. But your auntie and your uncle is still bringing you over there. And now you've gotten to a point to where you don't have an outlet that you can say something to. If you say something in school, you can risk mom getting in trouble in Child Protective Services. Child Protective Services in the Black community is like hell to a Christian. And so in its entirety, they carry that guilt. They carry that because you can't say anything. So now they're grown and now they're adults and we have promiscuity, Keisha got a whole bunch of baby daddies, okay? But Keisha don't mind staying in domestic violence situations because in her mind, that's love. Nobody ever gave a damn about Keisha. Nobody ever loved her. So she felt like using her body and being pregnant at 14, 15, 16 years old, which is the second part of that generational curse, nobody helped her. So instead of her mama really taking the heat for not getting that girl the help that she needed, she'll let her keep the baby because now she's raising out of guilt. Okay? And it's so on and so forth.
Well,
Jimmy Jr.,
This is hard hitting,
It
y'all.
is.
This is very hard hitting.
Jimmy Jr. now is a closet lesbian. We always know he was a bit feminine, but it didn't start when he was a baby. He wasn't born gay. Something happened to him. He didn't have an outlet. And it kept on happening to him. And he thought that this is what sex was. He thought that this is what love was. Nobody in his family told him otherwise. So guess what? Now he likes men. Is that right? Is it wrong? Ain't for me to say. I'm not here to judge. I'm here to educate. And that's the difference between the two. But when we talk about generational curses, we need to be mindful about we're cutting off our generation with these curses.
So how do we learn to break those curses? how do we learn to change that mindset? Because sometimes, generational curses could be, the alcoholism. It could be coming in, maybe my father was a workaholic. I got that work ethic from him. I'm a work myself to the bone. But also my father didn't spend time with his family.
Absolutely.
He didn't put any extra love and attention. It didn't matter because the paycheck came home and that's all that mattered, because that's what he thought.
Preach.
So that's part of a generation. How do I grow to change that mindset? How do I stop that generational curse?
Well,
because not just cutting off our generations and saying we're talking about the birth of this child and the birth of that child. Generational curses go into the mentality and those things that we're being taught
Absolutely.
from over and over again, coming home, and maybe my thought mentality is I drink till I throw up and go to sleep, or maybe my mentality is every time I come in the house there's going to be a half an empty whiskey bottle, so I grew up to think that every day I got a half an empty whiskey
Or a
bottle.
tray full of cocaine.
That is snorting my whole nose across the table.
Absolutely.
I mean, those are generational curses as well.
Absolutely.
How do we learn to change that information? How do we learn to change that narrative? Because a lot of times, unfortunately, because all of those things have happened, and when you talk about generations, we're losing our grandmothers, we're losing our grandfathers, we're losing the ones that are there to help additionally rear, because it is the parents' responsibility, but to additionally rear those people. So with that being said, now we've lost that whole thing. How do we gain that back when we know how to break that mentality, to get structured again, where it didn't matter if mom came in and worked to the bone. Now I know I want to spend some time with my kid because I love my child. And it's not that dad didn't love his child, because his love was money.
Right.
His love was money.
And sometimes
that was his love process.
Was what his father did.
That was his love process.
Right. So to answer your question, we are all a product of our environment, right, wrong, or indifferent. Okay?
Nature, nurture.
It is what it is. So if we grew up in a home and dad was a workaholic, mom stayed home, we got those views, we got those morals, that stuff was planted in us. When you do get older, there's a saying, when you know better, you do better. Okay, that's accountability and responsibility, that if you know what you were raised in, it's not going to be a good fit for you, then okay, it's up to you, the accountability and the responsibility on you, that if you don't know what to do better, then go out and seek it. That's why you have people like me.
Yes.
We have social workers, we have substance abuse therapists, we have marriage and family therapists. I got to shout them out because we're so often overlooked. We're out here. We're out here.
Say that again. Back that up. I need you to roll that one back again.
All right. I got to give
you want to shout out to who?
My license, my limited license, associate license, because I know this show is international. Marriage and family therapist. That is one of the licenses that I hold. We are often overlooked, but we are very, 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 very valuable, especially in the topics that we're talking about, marriage and family therapy. Because believe you me, if you don't have a strong family, you're really going to be lost.
Absolutely.
And we're going to talk about this as we transition into talking about businesses.